Hello friends. Today we are still looking at slope-intercept form equations, but now we are going in reverse. So before we were given the information and asked to find an equation to fit the word problem. Now we're given the word problem and the equation and asked to figure out what each piece is and means. So we have Faith, who is in the business of manufacturing phones. She must pay a daily fixed cost to rent the building and the equipment, and also pays a cost per phone produced for materials and labor. So we've got the equation C equals 225p plus 700, which is used to determine the total cost in dollars of producing P phones in a given day. This problem in particular is asking what is the y-intercept of the equation and what does it mean? What is the interpretation? So of course, slope-intercept form is our y equals mx plus b format, where m is the slope, not sticky keys, and b is the y-intercept. A common error is to think that y is the y-intercept because that seems like that makes sense, but that is not the case. So looking at this equation that we have here, we have C equals 225p plus 700. Now this is still in slope-intercept format, even though we have different variables. We have y, or instead of y we have c, and instead of x we have p, but it's still the same idea. So the number that is not attached to the x is still our y-intercept. So that means that our y-intercept must be 700. But what does that mean in our context here? So we know that there's a daily fixed cost to rent the building and a cost per phone. Now remember, per is our keyword for the slope, which is why the 225 is attached to the variable p. That's our slope. So it can't be the cost per phone, because that's the slope. It also can't be the total cost in dollars, because that has to be the C equals part of things. And it's definitely not going to be P phones. So what options do we have? The number of phones produced in a day? Nope, it's not going to be that one. The fixed cost for rent and equipment? Well, we haven't crossed that one off yet, but let's just see what the others say. The total cost to produce all of the phones? No, that's C. The additional cost to produce each phone, that would be our slope, our 225. Or the number of days to produce all of the phones. This has no bearing on the problem. There's nothing that talks about how many days it takes to do all of these phones. There's no limit of the phones that we are looking at. So it's definitely not going to be that one. So it has to be the fixed cost for rent and equipment. And that makes sense because our y-intercept is always going to be the kind of the base cost, the starting value, the flat fee, something that is not at all related to the variable. Let's try another one. Oops. So we have an electrician charges a set fee for every house call and then charges an hourly rate depending on how long the job takes. So there's a set fee and then an hourly rate. So charges a set fee, charges an hourly rate. The total cost can be determined using the equation C equals 60t plus 65, where t is the number of hours the electrician spends at the house working. Again, we're asked what the y-intercept is and what the interpretation is in the context of this problem, what that means. So again, our slope-intercept form is, of course, y equals mx plus b. So writing our equation that we're given here below that, we can pretty easily see that 65 must be our y-intercept because that's the one that does not have a variable. But now we need to figure out what it means. Okay. So, oops. There we go. So the problem tells us that C is total cost, because it's a C equals equation, so that must be the total. We know that B is 65, so then M must be the 60. But what do those mean? So there's a set fee for every house call and an hourly rate. And T is the number of hours. So even though we don't have our keyword per here, we don't need it because we've got an hourly rate and a number of hours. So this must be $60 per hour. And then T is hours. So let's look through our answer choices and see what 65 must mean. The total cost for all services? Nope, that's C. C equals the total cost. The hourly rate charged? That would be our slope, the $60 per hour. The set fee for the house call? Could be. We have not yet eliminated that, but let's come back to it. And then the number of hours the electrician spends at the house. It can't be that because that's T. So it has to be the set fee for the house call. And again, this makes sense because the slope, nope, not the slope, the y-intercept is always going to be like our starting value, the flat fee, whatever is not affected by the variable. So let's move to the other side of things. We were looking at the y-intercept, now let's look at the slope. So it looks like we've got basically the same problem that we had before. Samuel is in the business of manufacturing phones, but now we just have Samuel instead of whoever we had before. He must pay a daily fixed cost to rent the building and the equipment, and also pays a cost per phone. C equals 225p plus 900, and that's the total cost in dollars of producing P phones in a given day. And now we're asked to find the slope. So again, let's see. Our slope-intercept form equation is y equals mx plus b. Let's write the equation that we're given below in case we don't see already what our slope is. And now we can see that, okay, x lines up with p, y lines up with c, so m must be 225 and b must be 900. So the slope of our function is 225, but what does that mean? Okay, so let's go through our stuff. We know C is the total cost because it's a C equals equation and we're talking about total cost. We know that B is 900, but we don't necessarily know what that is right now. We know that M is 225, and we know that P is the number of phones. All right, so the slope can't be the total cost because that's C. It can't be the number of phones because even though they are put together, they are not the same. If these were the same things, we would only have one. We wouldn't have both 225 and P. That would be redundant. So it's not the total cost, it's not the number of phones. So it's between the daily fixed cost and the cost per phone. Now, remember, our keyword per indicates slope. So that must mean that the cost per phone, let's see, is the 225, the additional cost to produce each phone. Now, when you're doing these problems, one option is to go through all of your answer choices and see what makes sense. But sometimes they'll be worded in ways that are intended to trick you. So my recommendation is probably to figure out what it must mean first, and then see what answer choice best matches that. All right, so we've got the same electrician. That's nice. So again, he charges a set fee for every house call, and then charges an hourly rate for however long it takes. Total cost is using C equals 65t plus 85, where t is the number of hours he spends at the house. What is the slope of the equation, and what is its interpretation in the context? So y equals mx plus b. you can probably already see that our m is going to be 65. It's the number attached to the variable. So that's always going to be our slope when we're in slope-intercept form. But what does it mean? So we're told that C, again, is the total cost. So it can't be the total cost. We know that T, we're told, is the number of hours. So it can't be the number of hours. So we're down between charge as a set fee, so between a set fee and an hourly rate. Now, another way of writing slope, another word for slope, is rate of change. So even if we don't have our keywords of per or each or those sorts of things, we can still identify our slope in the problem because of a rate. So if we've got an hourly rate, that has to be our slope. Oops. So the hourly rate is our slope. So let's see what answer choice matches that. The hourly rate charged. Perfect.